But if I might say a little bit about thought leadership,
Yeah, please do.
lots of people talk about thought leadership, and I say to them, I said, "What do you think it is?" Oh, it's people want to know what I think, and we all want to talk, and it's like, well, not completely. I said the real ultimate thought leadership is when you get others to think.
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Helping People Perform. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio today. We have CEO of the M3 Media Group and a real advocate of thought leadership and what people can do with that. Welcome to the show today, David Lomas.
Thank you.
Great to have you on board, David. And I know we've got a lot to talk about, and including, if people aren't watching the video, we've got the Thought Club sort of logo behind you. I want to touch on that a bit later on. But before we get into that, maybe you could give us a little bit of background as to what got you to where you are today.
Okay, that's a long story, partly due to my age, of course. Communication's always been important to me, even as a child, and the way I was brought up. When I was, up until being about 18 or 19, I lived in a newsagent's shop,
Okay.
and from 8 years old, I've been serving customers. So I've
Right.
been used to talking with customers. Been used to talking with them and serving them. And my mother sort of drilled into me, if somebody comes to see you, comes to your home, you always take an interest in them. And I
Right.
had it drilled in by my mum. She was always very proper and massive respect to her. And some of the things that I learned there, it's always be polite to people, show an interest. And let me tell you, you don't realize it at the time, but later on in business, if that's the way you are, people respond to you. Be
Right.
polite, take an interest. It's the best thing to do, ask people questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. And is that sort of did that put you in a career in the sort of communication space? Where did your career kick off?
Well, it didn't. I went into banking and financial services, but I went into sales fairly quickly because, somebody staff that I worked with at the bank said, you should be selling. And I didn't really understand what it was. But they knew I was talking to everybody, which is, most people know me would confirm that. I went into financial services. Again, I'm helping people. That's what you're doing with financial advice. Came out of that and then went into marketing and discovered back in the day email, which was at one point it was new, of course.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh, this is clever. We can communicate with lots of people. But I realized even then, I thought, this can be used to build loyalty, not to sell, to build loyalty. So I saw the ongoing communication and the respect that you have to have. And even nowadays, nobody likes people who push messages out at us.
Yeah.
So the approach idea and the developing relationships sort of just came to me, and I got into initially marketing, and then where we came to now, for the last 10 or 15 years, I've been in digital publishing.
Right. Okay. And when you say digital publishing, what are some of the publications that you manage, or what's on your agenda there?
Okay, M3 Media Group, we have 9 or 10 digital magazines in different sectors. Very quickly, we've got a business magazine, property construction, HR, recruitment, manufacturing, supply chain, export, marketing, social impact, one or two others. I saw the need for communication when I was in financial services, and the way that you could put out at the time, it probably wasn't a story, but certainly put out a message, because I've got better over the years. And if you can gain somebody's attention to that message, if it's about, say, a product area in financial services, then you've drawn people in because you're talking about a need for it and the results of if you didn't do something, how things may go wrong.
Yeah.
So at the time, I didn't realize it was thought leadership. I can remember somebody saying to me, I'd been telling them what we do and talking, and they said, "Do you understand NLP, David?" I said, "Well, I don't know what it is." This was 30 years ago. I said, "Well, I'm not sure what it is." He said, "Well, you are one of the best exponents of NLP, the words you're using and the way you do it." So I had a natural ability. I think I wanted to sell to everybody, but wanted to have persuasive conversation, and that's what I enjoy. And it took me to the point of really understanding thought leadership to quite a high level.
Right. And just for our audience there, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, yeah?
Apparently. Apparently, I must be good at it. So it's the use of certain words, I think, and positioning and putting thoughts into people's mind.
Right.
And you can do it very cleverly. People talk about storytelling. It's not just the story. The story is one part. We can all hear a story. I could tell you a story, but there's a message within the story that I've given you.
Right.
And you can't help but get the message. And if you know how to do that, you're influencing the person who's going to make a decision about you.
Right.
And you're in some ways, you're wiping away all the objections. I mean, I've studied sales. I've been taught to sell in the old-fashioned way, overcoming objections and alternative closes and all this.
Yep.
And I realize now you don't need, if you still got objections at the point of sale, you've not done the job properly.
Right.
Because you shouldn't have any. And I can show people how to avoid having any objections and getting straight into a consultative discussion. That's what we do.
Oh, fantastic. And I just wanted to pick up on one particular point, actually. You say you've got sort of 9 or 10 publications, and you mentioned sort of manufacturing and HR and things like that. What's the thinking behind having sort of industry-specific or positional-specific content as opposed to just generalist content that's out there?
Yeah. Okay. Originally, when I put the first magazine together, was the Property Construction magazine. So it's a slightly different answer originally than it is now, but not too far away. I was dealing with quite a few property people. I can remember we had a project manager, Peter, we had a surveyor, we had a water specialist, drainage, that sort of thing. And I had a bunch of clients, and they were all trying to get to the same people.
Right.
And I thought, right. And I'd already been I started off doing newsletters for restaurants and communicating in that way. Then I started doing magazines. And for some of the major sports brands, we did a running magazine for ASICS, who's a major global brand. But I'd come away from that thinking, okay, not everybody can afford their own full-blown magazine. And the amount of work you need to put in to keep it going, forget it.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, if I do a property magazine, I can put those 10 clients in and say, listen, I've put all your content in here together. When you want to send that out to someone, send it out, send the link out, and they'll come to that magazine. But all the rest of you are doing the same thing. So that database that you're sending to, they come down the lines, down the digital links, if you want, to the magazine. And if somebody's reading an article about water drainage or whatever, they can look over to the left and go, oh, there's an interview there with a guy that's a project manager. So everybody gets to see the same collection of articles. So we've got very, very clever, what I call cross-pollination, if that makes sense. Yeah. You get seen by everybody else's database. We've since taken that a stage further, because if somebody comes to me and says, well, they need authenticity is what we talk about, and credibility. We don't have any advertising in the magazines. And I never wanted it from the start. Forget Google, go away, not interested. I said, I'm creating content that somebody can put in front of someone and they are comfortable and confident and trust it. So if there's a great big advert down the side from somebody's business, they're going to go, well, that's a good article. Oh, there's a great big ad. They've paid for that. Right. Doesn't work. So what we're doing is what we call in the PR trade earned content. It looks like you must be good to get in that magazine because that reads pretty well. Right. So it's positioning people in a sector, if that's the sector they're in, because it looks like, okay, an HR magazine has interviewed you and you're an HR specialist.
Right.
That's good. But that same HR specialist might say to me, David, I want to get into manufacturing. I said, right, tell me what you know. I'm going to interview you and we're going to put your article into Manufacturing Matters magazine.
Right.
So when you're talking to a manufacturer,
yeah,
I'll tell you the methodology in a minute, but they can bring it up, and that cements the deal in some cases.
Right. And I've just made a few notes for myself here because I've written relevant content and self-identification. So and also interesting connections. So I think for me, when you talk about an industry-specific resource, in this case a digital magazine, you've got that. If it says HR or Manufacturing Matters, someone can self-identify to say, I'm in manufacturing, and that matters to me. Therefore, this must be for me, and and it isn't the stuff that is about, as you say, sort of construction or HR, because it's relevant.
It's relevant. It's relevant to your prospect. If I may give you. I'll give you a scenario in which we've helped somebody using thought leadership content. But if I might say a little bit about thought leadership,
please.
Lots of people talk about thought leadership, and I say to them, I said, "What do you think it is?" Oh, it's people want to know what I think, and we all want to talk, and it's like, well, not completely. I said the real ultimate thought leadership is when you get others to think. That is critical, because in a sales environment, and what we're doing is it allows me to bring what's effectively marketing content into the sales approach, and very few people have been able to do it. So the thought leadership questioning is what I focus on.
Right.
And I don't know anybody else that's doing it as well as we do. And I'm going to give you an example here of how it can work. I was approached by a lady who's working in, let's say, the financial sector. And the part she was doing was not the most exciting. Let me say, so I won't give you details. But she said, David, I've got an issue. And I said, what's that? She said, I can meet 10 or maybe even 15 people, whether it's at networking, whether it's at an exhibition, whether it's at a lunch, whether it's a conference, whatever. Like we all do, a mix of people that we come across. Excuse me. And she said, out of 10 or 15 people, she said, one of them might have a second follow-up meeting with me, which is where she can try and move towards the sale, of course. So I said, well, I can understand that. And she said, yes, I know, but what can I do? So I said, well, the first tip is stop talking about what it is that you do technically, because it's not the most exciting thing. It's not a conversation starter. She said, so what? How can you help me? So I said, right. Who do you want to get to? And she said, accountants. And I said, right, I'm going to write a headline for you. She was dealing with compliance. Okay, not the most exciting. So I said, right, here's a headline for you. And if there's one thing I'm good at, it's writing headlines. So I said to her, right, here's the headline. And this is how I will write it. And this is how I will publish it. Accountants, : I said, we put the name in the headline because they recognize it's for them. This is a critical psychological point. If I was reading the back of a newspaper looking for sport, I'm only looking for 2 words, much to everybody else's annoyance in a minute, I'm sure. Manchester United. Okay. If it doesn't say Manchester United, I don't want to read it. But I'm drawn to the name. Now, accountants will also be drawn to the name. So there's method in my madness. So I said, accountants, : when does non-compliance turn into a crisis for your customers? And she said, that's a good question. I said, it's what I call a consequence question. It's a very good thought leadership question. I said, because you don't know the answer. He doesn't know the answer. So when does it turn into a crisis? If you'll excuse my French, it's basically saying, when's the shit going to hit the fan? And he's like, I don't know, but you've made me think. So you've made them think, and you pause when you ask the question. So she's asked the question in the conversation, and he's going to pause and stop and think. Bingo. Okay. But she can then follow it up by saying, reason I asked you the question, I was recently interviewed by Business Aspects magazine about that very subject. Look, let me send you a copy of the article. Don't ask for permission. Let me send you the copy of the article. It might give you food for thought. Can I call you next Wednesday, John? When's best, morning or afternoon? There's an alternative close for you. Yeah, he's in the diary. In the meantime, he gets that digitally in 2 minutes. She could send it instantly.
Yeah.
But within the article, there is further question. Well, we're interviewing her and she might be saying, as an accountant, how could this also affect your reputation? Now he's deeply in trouble reading this, okay?
Yeah.
And he's on the call next Wednesday. And I said, you'll go straight into a consultative discussion with him. There are other things we can do in amongst there, putting links back into your website and stuff, but I won't bore you with that. But she phoned me the next day. She said, David, you told me this yesterday. I used it this morning. She said, I told you I was getting 1 in 10 or 1 in 15. She said, I've used it this morning on 3 meetings. All 3 have gone to a second meeting. Thank you so much. Right. Now, that's an increase in sales approach from 10% to 100% overnight.
Yeah.
And I said to her, well, first of all, thank you for listening. I said, but absolutely well done for actually doing what I suggested. And right. I said, what do you need now? She said, I need those articles writing because I've promised them all an article. And I'm saying, oh my God. She had the confidence to do it with the headline I gave her. And she's saying, oh, I was recent. We hadn't even interviewed her by then. But so sorry to go on a bit about that. But that really illustrates what we do, because everybody has that approach. They've got to start somewhere. I can show them how they can prospect with content. I can show them how they can have value, impact, and then, of course, credibility. But right at the beginning of the approach, it is no use trying to have it later. It's too late. Right. You have to have the value, impact, and credibility straight away, but in a very subtle manner. Okay, it works. But also the conversion rate when you go onto that call is going to be so much better.
Right.
So that's
fantastic.
What we do.
Oh, well, I mean, that's some amazing stuff. And I mean, you said earlier on, maybe it was before we started the recording here, but about your passion for thought leadership, and I think that's coming through massively.
Well, yeah, I do get a bit over the top, but I do. I love helping people. If somebody comes back and does what I've told them, fantastic. That's flattery. Fantastic. I'm chuffed. So
that was another point I wanted to raise, actually, in terms of it's all well and good hearing this great stuff from people, having great advice, hearing tools and techniques that are going to help you, but it's only the people who implement those things and try them out and experiment who actually will go off and see the results.
Yes,
that's a key point, isn't it? In terms of just you've got to try these things out, and you've got to be willing to graze your knees without breaking your legs.
Well, to do this, all they need is that published content, and that's obviously the bit we do. Right. Now, the other point is, once we've created that content, I'd be disappointed if somebody didn't use it in that manner, but there are so many other ways of using it. You've got newsletters, you've got social. You can use that content in all sorts of places. And can I say the sort of people, I know you're probably going to ask me the sort of people it might be useful for. This is ideal for somebody who doesn't like selling. I spoke to a lady the other day and she said to me, David, I've had 20 years in HR. I love HR. I know HR backwards, right? I'm passionate about HR. She said, but now I work for myself. And she said, I have to sell myself. The one thing I hate is I have to sort of pitch or sell or whatever. And I said, I can show you how you don't need to.
Right.
And you can imagine how happy she was when I explained. So she could use that. She could use that content as like a shield of protection. Mm. Whereas a salesperson who's confident, some lunatic like me, I'll sit in a boardroom and say, right, boys, whilst you're making that cup of tea that I can't see, here's an article. Please have a read. And I'll make them read it whilst somebody's making me a cup of tea. No, it doesn't. Not everybody can get away with this, let me tell you. But that's what I would do. And I've done that at a very, very high level. And they sit there going, this is the guy that we want looking after us. Now, depends what job you're doing for them, but you certainly need impact. And it does it. Now, I'm not suggesting everybody else should, but if you are just gently confident, you could say to someone, oh, let me send you this. It's such a nice bit of PR. Oh, I was interviewed by Manufacturing Matters the other day. Oh, you're in manufacturing, aren't you? Oh, it might be relevant. We make it relevant to the manufacturer, not to you. You're in there making comment, but it's all focused on their challenges, because you end up focused and discussing their challenges, not your business. Right. That comes in later. As a prospect of someone, I don't need to hear about your business. I need to hear that you understand mine, you understand my sector. And if you pass that test, then I'll consider talking and finding out about what you do. Most people get it totally the wrong way round. They start off their 30-second pitch saying, I'll tell you about us. No, I'll tell you about the customers I'm working with, right, and what I can do with them. And they go, oh, I could be that person. And that's, anyway, I could go on about the balance of a piece of communication, but and the structure of communication. People get it wrong. They get it in the wrong order. Anyway.
So tell me a little bit then. Let's follow up with Thought Club. How does Thought Club fit into all of this?
Thought Club. Thought Club is a members club that I run. And it was actually a place where I put people together. And I've been doing the system we use. It's a mastermind group. We'll have somebody at the top of the table. It's all digital. It's all online. Excuse me. It's all online. We'll put somebody at the top of the table who has a challenge of some sort. This can work very well. I used I say a big lawyer. He is quite a size. He's a friend, but by that time he has 350 partners. That's right. What I mean by big lawyer. Okay, proper fun. And I said, have you got a challenge? And he said, yeah, I'm opening an office in Leeds. I said, that'll do. Will you sit there? You're at the top of the table. I've got 20 people. We're going to ask you questions, and then we're going to come up with suggestions. And that's what we do. Dead simple. Yeah. Tell us about who you are. And you can imagine, I've got round the table HR people, a journalist, electrical contractor. I'm a right mix of people. Doesn't matter, because they've all got different experience. Anyway, we finished it, an hour and a half. We have a really good session. Only the other week, somebody said to me, David, that was like sitting in front of McKinsey's for an hour and a half. Right. And I said, wow, thanks. But this lawyer, I said to him afterwards, because everybody enjoyed it, I said, thanks for that. And he said, David, that was fabulous. And I said, what? He said, that was fabulous. I was in another meeting at the time, so I had one of my team run it. He said, I learned more in 90 minutes than I have in the last 10 years. Maybe that's lawyers for you, because they only know about the law and nothing else, But and he said, I took 5 pages of notes. And he said, can I say, there are 7 other people around that table that I want to talk further to. Right. Now, that's a law firm with 350 partners. That's not a bad client to have, okay? Yep. But if he understood and learned that much, then so did everybody else around the table. But in answer to your question, I put people in there to say the best thing you can do around an environment like that, round a table, as I call it. It's not a table, you're on screen, of course. I said, is to ask a really good question. Rather than going to somebody and say, what do you think? And they go, oh, this is my chance to talk. I'm a thought leader. No, you're not. You're just talking too much. I would just say, can I put a question to the group? This is an interesting proposition. But what if that? And what are the consequences of that? Right. And everybody shuts up and goes, ooh, he knows what he's talking about. I've said nothing. But I've asked a question that suggests you know a lot of information to be able to ask that question. But the question is what gets the impact. And everybody around the table wants to talk further because you've given nothing away. Right. That's the key. Yeah.
There we go.
Does that make sense? Ask questions and listen. Ask questions and listen rather than talking. And if you're ever in a one-to-one with somebody and they'll say to me, what do you do, David? I said, oh, publishing. I said, I'll tell you later. You tell me what you're doing. I can probably give you a better answer. And I get them to tell me absolutely everything. And they'll never get a chance to ask me because we've run out of time. But I've asked them the question that said, we need to talk further, David. I'll say, have a read of that. Let's talk next week.
Right.
And they're still wondering what I do. But it doesn't matter. That's the enjoyment for them. Maybe.
Wonderful. So one of the questions I love to put to my audience as well is, you're helping all these people and you're helping them to perform. And that's the topic of this podcast, is people who help others perform at their best. But
Yes.
what do you do to help yourself be at your best? What are the things that you do to keep yourself on top of your game?
I'm constantly listening and learning. I analyze things that people are doing. I never think I know everything. I know a lot, and I know I'm good.
Right.
I have no problem with making that statement. But I'm always looking to get better. I want people around me on my team that are better than I am, because I can get them to do the work and I don't need to. But that's how you run a business.
Yep.
You've got to have good people around you. But I just keep learning from other people, really. I'm not one for doing courses. I just pick up a lot of information and I think a lot. I think about, I'm a critical thinker. I look at everything that people are doing and think, I don't think that's right. If I can be persuaded, it is fantastic. But I'll challenge people, and I like to challenge people. And sometimes I'll go, do you know, you're right, I was wrong. But I wanted to challenge you because it's the only way you get it out of the argument.
Right.
If you can have that challenge, that argument, you'll get a result. When it all breaks apart, you go, yeah, I'll change my mind about a bit of it.
Right.
So, but I'm open to have my mind changed in all sorts of areas.
But not about Man United.
Oh no, I'm not particularly impressed with them at the moment.
So let me ask a couple of follow-up questions then, in terms of, if you could help any individual or team or organization or group of people with the skill set and the experience that you've got, who would you want that to be?
I can work with any small business with 2 or 3 members of the team, sort of thing. The value of the content grows if somebody's actually got, when I say a sales team, less people have sales teams nowadays. They have people internally.
Right.
I can help those people internally who can be talking to customers and can easily get into, because they're on a friendly, ongoing relationship with your customers, doing their accounts and sending stuff out to them or whatever they do. We all need to get the best out of all our employees. If you can have an employee on the phone and she's chatting to someone, I could give her an article that's interviewing her managing director, and she could just be talking about whatever the subject is and ask a question to the customer on the phone, saying, "Oh, is this ever an issue for you? Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Really?" Only because I was just looking at, John, the managing director, has been recently interviewed by Manufacturing Matters magazine about that. Let me send you a copy of the article. I'll get John to call you. She's just put us into another opportunity.
Right.
So anybody who's got a sales team, that same piece of content can be used thousands of times forever.
Right.
So it becomes massively valuable. And yeah, I literally, I can help anybody, whether it's the introverted person who needs that shield of protection, or whether it's a team of salespeople who think they're very good, but I can make one of them that much better because I can get him asking questions and get him to shut up talking. He says.
Brilliant. And so if we flip that on its head and said, if you could sit down and have a drink, have a meal, have a coffee with somebody that you believe could help you with your performance and up your game, who would you want that to be?
Up my performance. It's all about communication. It's all about presentation. Whether that's one person that stands out. Obviously, I watch lots of interviewers and see the way they behave, and I host discussion groups as well, separately, in manufacturing, which we touched on before. But probably an actor. And if I had to pick one an actor that can stop a room with a 5-minute speech. And there's an example which you can find on YouTube. Richard Burton.
Right.
paying tribute to Frank Sinatra, probably back in the, I don't know, was this 60s, 50s, 60s? I can't remember. It's only 4 minutes. Find it. Massively impressive. Unbelievable. And I just thought, my God, a room of Americans. Right. You can imagine all the glitterati back in the 60s. And you can see the lady just sitting behind Sinatra when Burton had finished his speech. She just went, you could see the words in her mouth. She just went, wow.
Right. Okay. Well,
floored the room.
I'm going to find that not only for myself, but I'll make sure that I put that link in the show notes for people to go and have a listen to themselves and get some inspiration there.
Please do.
So if there was one thing that you would like this audience to go away from this podcast episode remembering or thinking about, what would you want that to be?
We're all in business. What financial difference could you make, not just your business, but your life, by adopting what I'm teaching about thought leadership?
Right. Fantastic. So get thinking about that. I know I'm going to be thinking about that one from my own perspective, but it's a great consequence question. I'm learning the lingo as we go here as well. But yeah, a great question to put out there for people to think about and see what it really means to them. And as undoubtedly some people are going to want to follow up with this and learn more, maybe get in touch with you. How do they get in touch with you and find out more about what you do, David?
Okay. Please find me on LinkedIn, which is probably the easiest thing. Yep. David Lomas, you've got the name, M3 Media Group. You could just do a Google search and you'll get pages, I can promise. Otherwise, my email is david@m3publishing.co.uk. Happy to talk to anybody. And if anybody would like to come to a session as my guest, come to a session of Thought Club. We sort of run them every month, usually the third Thursday in the month at 1:00, and it's an hour and a half. Right. You'll enjoy it, you'll learn, and you'll meet people. And we're looking to build Thought Club. So yeah, please, come to me, and one of my team will get you booked on. And it'd be nice to meet you all. And at some point, I'll happily talk to every one of you about, let's look at how we can help you if that's what you might want.
Brilliant. So as always, all of those links are going to be in the show notes so that people don't need to go off and search for them. You just go in the notes below and you'll find the clickable links so that you can go straight to David's LinkedIn page. I'll put his website in there and also, links to that video from Richard Burton as well. So we'll make sure that's all captured. David, I've learned so much from this conversation and it's been fantastic, and I look forward to seeing where Thought Club goes in the future, and I hope you go from strength to strength. So thanks for being on the show today, David Lomas.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Cheers, Paul.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.